Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Today we're discussing Allegiant, which is, of course, movie 3 in the Divergent series. We have Sarah Stratton, actress and scriptwriter.
Yeah.
Welcome.
I didn't know that.
Thank you.
And we have Cortez G. West.
Yes.
Welcome.
Hey, what am I feel?
You are number one. You're film buff just like us. You tend to like the action movies, so we can definitely categorize this as an action movie. Although
Do you categorize this as an action movie?
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know how Cortez thinks.
Yeah.
This is the young adult action movie, like
Is that again?
a young adult action movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most definitely young.
Sounds good.
That's right. And I'm Phil Svitek, COO of Popcorn Talk and AfterBuzz TV, and film editor. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, as we talk Allegiant. Let's start with overall thoughts. I want to give my thoughts on this movie. I still like this series better than Hunger Games. Only because I know this is going to be very controversial. Here's the thing, for better or for worse, it's like a Russian doll that you just keep opening further and further, and it just gets crazier and crazier. Now, whether or not that's good, we can debate that, and I'm still kind of puzzling with it myself, but it's just different than the Hunger Games. And I know people hugely disagree with me,
yes,
but nonetheless, that is my sentiment.
Accurate. I hugely disagree with you. We've covered this series for a while. I feel like we've been talking about all movies.
Hunger Games, we only covered the last 3.
Yeah, and for this movie, there's a lot of things that play into my opinions. I read the first book. And then I saw the series, and then I've seen all of these movies. So this movie doesn't stand alone for me. And what it came down to is this is my least favorite of the Divergent series that have been made so far. I did have a lot of problems with it. I think that if I hadn't read the book, I only read the first book, I only read Divergent, and if I hadn't seen the other movies, I would have liked this movie more. Mm-hmm. But based on those factors, and that's the audience you're really playing to, it is nice to have a series movie that stands on its own, but you are playing towards the fans, the people who have stuck around for the franchise. That's the point of doing franchises, and it didn't work on that level.
Well, I have a question, because if you're a person that's not following a certain series and you go and watch a movie for the first time, and it may be in the middle of the series, that still should be a good movie, right?
I agree that it should be a good movie, definitely. But I think that it's better if I have to pick, the movie should be better for the people who are dedicated to the franchise than for the few people that get pulled in to see that one part.
So this is a problem then, because I've witnessed that people who follow the series, plus people like me, I'll be speaking for the ones who haven't followed the series, have said this movie is whack. And I have to raise my hand up and say I agree.
Okay.
From being a person just coming in and watching it. I mean, some of the things, to me, when I watch certain movies, and especially if we're going to put it in the category of an action movie, there were some things that I thought that I would see, when the guy got shot in the back of the head, and I wanted to see the dramatics of that, and then they go back and show him again, and there was no blood, there was nothing whatsoever, and I was just like, what?
You
gotta cater to your audience.
Clean world that they have, there is no blood.
Well, it was raining blood, so I can't see blood. I mean, come on.
It's definitely different. I don't know if you want me to go off on a tirade, so I can let you direct the
right?
rest of the conversation. Because I think
How about I'll give you 45 seconds?
Keep going. primarily, my biggest issue with this movie, there were a couple things that I liked, and we'll get into that more when we start talking about production design, character development, whatnot. But my biggest problem with this movie was the motivations behind the characters. Number one, on a movie on its own, I felt that the dialogue, the character relationships were pushed. I felt like actors were trying to like make their motivations happen because it just in the story didn't make sense. On top of that, relating to franchise, I thought that problems that they've had, for instance, between Triss and Number 4, like their relationship should have been stronger by this point. We didn't need to rip them apart. I felt like their like trouble in paradise couple like came out of nowhere because someone said, oh, we need them to break up for a bit, or we need them to have a problem. I didn't feel like it was justified. I thought we were reliving themes that our characters had already learned the lesson of in previous films. So
you didn't enjoy the chemistry?
I did enjoy their chemistry. What I didn't understand is that in the first two movies, they build up their relationship. They've kind of already gone through trials, and they've been through so much together, and so much about like not trusting others, but really being there for each other, that in this, when they took a step back over the same issue of trusting an outside person who's been in their lives for about 2 minutes, didn't feel justified. I believe from what they've created before, I believed in them as a couple. So to tear that apart so easily, just for the sake of creating conflict, bothered me.
You know, the way Theo James kind of explains it, in the first movie, they had a mistrust for each other. In the second movie, he was trying to protect her. And in this one, because they are comfortable with each other, they're on a level plane, and they can have arguments as a real couple. And I think, you know, I think it is somewhat reflective of that. And
I think, I'm not saying that once you're a solid couple, you can't have issues. The issue that they picked, which was bringing in this man that they know nothing about and having Triss automatically sign with him while he's like discriminating against 4, didn't make sense to me. Like, if he had been a huge 4 fan and was nice to 4 the whole time and then was telling Triss a different opinion, maybe I could see her being swayed. But the fact that you have this person coming in, you know nothing about them, he's telling you this whole story.
You're talking about David.
With your whole life. The problem of this series is they're constantly being told lies. They're being told things to believe, and they find out they're false. That's an ongoing theme. So that's when you're training your characters to be suspicious. And then you have this person who's lived this way of learning to be suspicious of everyone, and you have someone come in telling her another story, and she believes it. And this person is going, like, discriminating against her boyfriend.
But she didn't see that at first, though. I don't think she saw that at first, did she?
I mean, I think that's debatable. I just think that I wanted them to be on a stronger front, and I thought that what tore them apart between this like decision that she had to make to go see this counsel or stay just wasn't handled in a way that I thought was believable. I literally thought that some of the things in here were like, we need bigger conflicts. We need
I see what you're saying in that aspect.
We need to ramp up this action. We need to divide people and bring them back together. It just felt like on page 30, we have to have this happen.
I just got tired of her wearing white. I was like, we know you're pure, girl. You're pure. We get it.
Well, let me ask you, you know, this is something that Cortez wouldn't have known, but to me, when she's going to Providence, she's dressed exactly like Janine. Which Janine was obviously the evil character in the first 2 movies and something to overcome. And so it was interesting that was the wardrobe that they chose to give her.
I mean, that goes to production design in general, which it was extremely obvious, like when she is wearing white and everyone else is wearing black. When you have like the DNA structure of the building that David's in, or in
at the Chicago airport.
Yes, like it you can tell it's just like very literal, kind of like you are wearing white, you are wearing black. This is make it everything as cookie cutter as possible.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, you know, is this a problem, since we're kind of talking about story, might as well talk about story, and then we'll kind of backtrack. is this a problem with franchises in general, because one has to build upon the other, and it's almost like it becomes a trope of like in the next one you meet the new boss. So in this scenario, we've defeated Janine. We kind of get a quick recap of that, and then we've moved on to now David, and then back in Chicago we have the factionless and Joanna fighting.
I mean, they say you always have to change directions. If with this franchise, it seems to have been, Triss in the Divergent is battling her own identity. It's like that's who she is the problem. And then you expand to the city, and it's like who she is in this city and the problem there. And this is expanding to the world. So it's like her circle is getting bigger and bigger. And that's very normal for franchises. You do have to pick a new villain or enemy or challenge. Like, you can't do the same thing every time. That's how stories work. I liked the expansion because I did want to know what was outside of the walls. So
this is the first time you get to see what's outside of the wall.
Yes. So basically, your first movie, for anyone else who didn't see it, in the first movie you meet Triss. She is kind of an outcast. She doesn't fit in with her family. And that's because she has this capability to what at the time they called be dauntless, which is kind of like the kick-ass, like, military sector of the society. So she, like, goes away from her family, who's very peaceful, and joins, like, basically the military combat people. And
I was wondering why she can fight all of a sudden. I was just like, this is a movie. Like, as the first person coming to see this movie for the first time in this series, I'm like, why can everyone fight? Because I didn't see where they were staying.
That's like first movie. Is like that she was not raised by the combat people, but she has this skill. But it turns out that there's more to her, and basically she can't be confined by like a type of person, whether it be peaceful or smart or athletic, like dangerous. She is balanced and has all of these characteristics. And then, so that's really who she is in the first one. Then the second one, she wants to kind of break the mold of the society and stop these, what they called factions, from happening. And there's like this whole plot with, you've got Janine, and she's like the key because she does have this divergent, I don't know how you would say it, genetic.
Box that needed the Pandora's box that needed to be unlocked, which is the secret
like
that
the
led us here.
Because she's like what we would call probably well-rounded. And now she's broken out. Obviously, we see that this whole thing's been an experiment. She is either the miracle child of the experiment.
Well, let me ask you this, because this, you mentioned that this thing's built lies upon lies. One of the things that I still walk away with, what is the true goal of David and the Chicago experiment? Because obviously in Providence we find out that he lied about everything, and that he has the power to do anything he wants.
Right, and I didn't see him as a villain. I just thought that he just wanted to try to, I don't know.
And what is it like? I get we're introduced to the genetics of damaged versus pure. Is he actually trying to make pure genetics in people?
The fact that we have to guess, and I can't just be like, this is his goal, is kind of a problem, because when I say what I think his goal is to prove that damaged people can eventually create pure people by just the right kind of balance and mixing and time.
But would you say? But honestly, I want to talk about that, because I think you have to kind of go with that. As harsh as he is, right? I never got a sense that utilitarianism, right? So where you do things that might not be so good, but you do it ultimately for the greater good. And I'm not sure at the end of it if I walked away with that his motives were truly at least utilitarianist.
Okay, I could totally see that, and I think it's because, for me at least, there was a couple of things that were hazy, because you have, I'm going to call three locations. You have the pure city, you have your scientist compound that's observing, and you have the inside the walls. And dealing with the council, dealing with David, wasn't clear enough as to who really wanted what and where they wanted this all to end up.
Do you think that council scene was cut short? I
think
felt
so.
like it.
I felt
I
like it
felt like
was
the
too.
whole council city was cut short.
I was I thought we were going to be there for at least a good 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And we just get one tiny scene, maybe less than a minute.
I think that's where you get this is a part one. And sometimes when people are like, this can be 2 movies, you get scenes like this that just feel out of place.
Yeah.
That whole thing could have happened over a visual call or a hologram or something and been more effective. They took you somewhere new, left you there for 1 minute, and it was 3/4 of the way through. It didn't make any sense.
Strange as thing may be, I wasn't able to find Providence in the books. I don't know. Maybe it actually existed in the books, but I wasn't able to find whether or not it actually existed. So forgive me. You guys know I try to do as much research as possible. Which, by the way, you can download our show notes.
Yeah.
But if anyone's read the full books, please let me know because I can't find whether or not Providence is in there.
I'm very interested because this gets into a little bit of story. I'm very curious how book readers do feel about this. I mean, in general, reviews haven't been that positive. But when you have the director of Allegiant went to Shailene Woodley playing Triss and said, don't read the book because so much is changing.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And I read book 1 before seeing the first movie. And the reason I stopped reading was because there was a tonal change for me between the books and at least the first book and the first movie. The first book of Divergent to me was very gritty, very dark, there's brutal scenes.
And it's huge. That is a thick book.
Yeah.
It was like this thick.
I don't even remember. I just remember.
I think it's 400 something pages.
I was like, wow.
I just remember being like, wow, they're going to make a dark young adult movie, and then it came out and it didn't embrace that grittiness. It wasn't horrible the first movie or anything. I stuck with the series, but I was like, okay, if this is the tone they're going with, I can't get connected to this franchise as.
We will talk about the big at the end. I will call a spoiler, and we'll kind of discuss some things. So for those of you who read the book, feel free to stick around for that. But the first book is written is the source material you actually enjoyed it? Because
I read the first book and I really enjoyed it.
Because I have in terms of the source material, a lot of people are citing that it isn't necessarily the strongest. And if I had to get, I just kind of perused through the books, and the fact that it's written first person and it's present tense, I think is very limiting. And unfortunately, that to me also there's many people that cite that of a novice writer.
I mean, I can't speak for the whole franchise. I can just speak from my first experience and the points that stuck out. And this was the book where we were dealing with this young girl basically learning how to fight. And it was you had scenes where she was getting beaten up. Kids, I think, were dying. And a lot of that just kind of got cleanly. I mean, you mentioned it even earlier in this movie. You're not seeing the blood, the disaster in this. It is the spiffy new version. It's supposed to be visually appealing. You're not supposed to be feeling. It's never been gritty. The fact that I felt like the blood raining from the sky scene was tame.
Would you say that the first book was grittier than Hunger Games, the book?
I haven't read them in a couple of years. That's too reaching back in my memory. And I'm I don't know. I don't remember.
We gotta get you some better memory.
I just need to read fewer books. And they blend together after a while. But I mean, it's what they've picked, and I'm wondering. They've talked about oversaturation in the YA market. That's a constant, and this has not done well. And is it because of the visual look? Is it because it reads too similar to, if you pull up a picture of this to Maze Runner to Hunger Games, their color scheme wise, a lot of it seems very
it was kind
similar.
of predictable too, as a person that's watching it. I was I know this might happen, but I was and when it did happen, I was oh man, come on. I knew the character, I forgot his name actually, the one that's the a-hole.
Peter.
Peter, when he was starting to, because I guess from my review of watching everyone else's review, it was more so he's a character that has always been that way, always an a-hole, right? So like when he was in the room with Evelyn and he was locked up, but he got away. Like I knew he was not gonna die. I was like, he's pretty much almost holding. Every time. And I was like, he's pretty much holding that.
Happens to him every movie. He like messes up, betrays everyone, and then still lives. Every time.
Wow.
Because he adds comic relief throughout the movie.
Yeah, and that's what I figured. I was like, nah, he's kind of carrying the inside of the movie to me.
Yeah.
But people are actually citing like the switch between his tone from the book to the movie. They actually do like him specifically for that comic relief. And I don't know if this is a factor in any way, shape, or form, but Miles Teller and Shailene Woodley are close friends. So,
well, she brought him onto this series. She brought him into Divergent. They had done a movie, but outside.
Spectacular Now.
Yep, Indy, and she got this, and she basically pulled him on. She's
That's a friend. That's a true friend. Yeah. But I would definitely say he did keep me from continuing to watching the movie, because usually I would get up and leave, but like I didn't follow the story. I was mostly following like little points and little things that would happen when it got more action, and that's when I'm like, oh, cool. But yeah,
the fight scenes were my favorite part, actually.
Yeah, and the fact when they first got over the wall and they first got to the city, and like that whole, I'm into technology. I'm into like high tech things. Yes, and I was just like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like how they was in the little floating things, bubbles. And then they got to the thing and they had to take the clothes off and stuff like that.
There was a lot of gadgetry in this one.
Yeah.
A lot, I would say probably more than the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, you had to connect the worlds. And so I liked that aspect of it, because we've had the simulations in the past, and now, while this isn't a simulation, you're kind of simulating into a real place. So I enjoyed that. And Shailene, she spoke about how this time around they have to be a lot more trusting of the visual effects, because at least in the past they've had physical sets to work with. This was just, it was just blue screen, green screen, whatever the case was. And they had to believe that their reactions, whatever they were reacting to, would work.
Did you have a favorite gadget?
I really liked the whole I was like Caleb in just the monitoring scene of like, oh, this is fantastic.
Well, you can see like everyone. Yeah, but it was kind of like weird though. It's like, where are the cameras for me to see every single thing that every single person is doing?
I wanted them to come up with more rules.
Because I was like, hold on, that's not cool.
There was no.
We're being watched right now.
Yeah, I'm like, hold on, this is not cool.
They didn't create any guidelines for the viewer, and maybe there weren't any. But that's always. When you just give someone an ultimatum, like, they're watching you absolutely everywhere, that's not as entertaining as finding the loopholes, or even using their own technology to find those loopholes. Like, oh, well, everyone in that city doesn't know we're watching them, but if you use our, like, camouflage army gear, you can avoid. Like, there was no, this is how you break the rule, this is where the line is. It was just kind of a blanket statement of, you're viewed everywhere, and didn't give you anything else.
I think the biggest problem was that they were viewed everywhere, but not everyone was viewing them, even though when they arrived, everyone knew them, as if this was like Big Brother.
Yeah.
The TV show, not necessarily
that's trash. It was like, oh, cat. She needs to go sign an autograph or something.
It was that was a little bit of miss for me.
It's kind of creepy.
Yeah. I think my favorite gadget was, I did like the drones.
That was dope.
I thought that was pretty cool, and I did like the costuming. How depending on how their camo would change, how it would shift from the red to the blue. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. But I was like, yeah, there's some cool gadgets. They've good ideas. I just wanted a little bit more of connect the dots and have your gadgets play against each other, because pretty much it was like their gadgets dominate everything, and there was no way to like counteract battle.
They lived in pretty low rank whatever habitats, right? I mean, basically they're like they're barracks, but they're so low rent for this technology.
Yeah,
it was kind of weird in that way.
Okay.
One of the things that I want to talk about the Fringe, because that, for the first time we're kind of introduced to people in the real world that aren't part of neither experiment nor this high-tech society. What was your impression of that? Because obviously we get it through the mother's eyes at first, that it's, you know, a bad thing, and that what David's doing is a good thing, but we obviously left out the whole part where she's brainwashed, or at least brain erased.
I liked the addition of the fringe. I liked the idea of it. In my head, it was like a little bit of like, you could maybe find some, I don't know, like Mad Max design out there or something.
It did look like Mad Max a little.
The tents and the colors, and except for Mad Max is more extreme, obviously. But I actually didn't fully believe the contact mother memory scene for almost the entire movie. I thought that was fake. Like, I thought that was a, like, lie in technology, and it was going to be like, oh, he crafted that. I didn't take that to be true straight when it was true, because to me, it didn't make sense. I didn't understand how she was born out there and then got into the city and got, like, put in a faction, especially when we've heard from that character in previous movies about how she went through the same ceremonies that Trish did, which implied that she was a young adult or child there.
17.
Trish mother.
So yeah, so in the previous movies, like when Trish is going through all this like internal identity struggle, her mother's there for her, and it's kind of like, I think she says like, I was born in Dauntless or something, but she hints that like she's been there and grew up there and went through that transition as well.
Yeah, because they saw when she gave her they gave Trish the thing, the pin things for her to see her mother's eyes from that time frame. So,
but for me, it like was a disconnect, because there's lines to support that her mother was in that society for a long time, and then the way that I heard David say it made it sound like she had reached adulthood before transferring over to the city. So to me, I was like, I just didn't know if I believed him.
So where do you ultimately end up on it?
Ultimately, they end like saying it was true. So I have to take what the movie says. They never say that it was a lie. So I have to, like, just based on that, I just have to believe, because that's the circumstances they were giving me.
I mean, to me, it seems simple enough that she was kidnapped. She got the memory erase serum, and then she was there, and for however it happened, whether by actual volunteering or not, I don't think it ultimately matters. She ended up going to as part of this experiment.
Yeah, I mean,
she grew up there.
I have to believe that. I didn't think it really was believable in the way it was portrayed, but.
So you said the part when what Trish saw, what was supposed to be her mother's eyes, you didn't believe that?
Not immediately. Mm-mm.
Well, I can kind of see why you would, because to me, like, why would they only keep Trish's mother's memory? And I was just like, well, why all of a sudden? So like, if David can make all this other stuff, he probably made that as well.
Same,
right?
Like I thought it was a trick.
I thought it was a trick. I was expecting more, and I was curious why he didn't show. Like, we didn't go on this entire journey. Why that? Like, because it was very specific and it was very drawn out. I thought we'd kind of have like a montage of memory of like, like at first she was a kid, and then she was this, and then she was this, and then she was this, and we just got that portion.
It didn't. I mean, but we are told that it's true, and nothing else says that it's not. So I think we have to believe it.
Fair enough. Let's talk about Caleb, the brother, because I mean, you could look at Peter and he's overtly this sort of weasel character, but Caleb, he's been on the fringe a little bit,
Right, and I can understand it. Like, was he like first of all, why was he arrested?
So in the previous movies, Caleb basically was part of the faction that was run by like basically a tyrant woman. So she kind of like took over, and he worked for her. Okay. And there comes to a point where I believe he goes to kill his sister, or something along those lines.
Trish?
Yeah. So I don't remember exactly, but
these are for the people who haven't watched the other ones. I'm asking these questions for you,
More or less, he worked for the team you didn't want to win.
Okay.
He's like an SS soldier for Hitler.
Got it.
Or was.
But he was Trish's brother. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now I see why 4 was like, I gotta save your brother. I'll help you save your brother.
Yeah.
Okay.
But But yeah, we're there's still a lot of distrust in that regard.
This was him building up towards. I felt like of the movies, this was his most likable.
Likable, yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
this was his trying to help, trying to be a good person.
When she asked him to find 4, he's like, anything for you. And
let me ask you this, because I'm not going to give it away where it's going, but in terms of motivation, is it out of? Did you feel that it was out of true love or out of a necessity that he owes them something?
No, I really think it was
Caleb.
out of. Yeah, I think it was out of true love at that point when they got to the city.
I think that he is changing. I think that he's I think that Caleb, even though he hasn't always been, his allegiance hasn't always been with where the audience wants it to be, he does try and do things for the right reasons. He doesn't. They haven't really displayed him as a malicious or evil character versus like Peter's intentions are definitely self-centered.
Yeah, you see it. Yeah.
He's arrogant. Like Caleb doesn't possess those qualities. But if I have to pick like one character's motivations or arc that's going in a way that I feel the most believable, it is 4. 4 for the series. I feel like his trajectory as a character is the most consistent, believable, and for me, it carried a lot of this movie.
What did you think? Did you think, Caleb?
It's tough to say because I know the direction that it's headed, so I can't really speak on it without biases.
Got it.
Gotcha.
But it's interesting that you say 4. Let me ask you this, just as a general quick note. Theo James, he understands he gets these parts because he's Theo James. Yeah. But at the end of it, he wants to make sure that people like him for his acting. So,
I just said, he's my favorite character arc. I think that also comes from the writing. I think he does a good job of it, but at least the writing for his character, I understood why he was doing what he was doing. The only part I didn't like is when there's a couple instances in this movie where I don't like it when characters have a key piece of information and have the opportunity to say it and don't. For instance, when he finds out about the memory gas for the children, and he goes to tell Tris, like, hey, this guy's doing horrible things, and that is the line to call her, like, she walks away, and that's the time to call her back with, he's erasing their memories, and he doesn't say it.
Yeah, he has this long monologue prepared, but he can't summarize it.
I was like, where are you going with this? But now I see what you're saying. Like he doesn't just say.
Like, he has all these facts. Like, he has, they're taking kids, they're doing
You're not going. Yeah, because he was like, you're not going. But now he didn't. I was just like, well, just tell her so she can.
Exactly. You just don't get to the point where, like, this, and if you say this to someone, they're going to pause for at least 2 minutes and let you finish what you're saying. Yeah. And there was a couple times.
Or there was going to be havoc to be had.
But we needed to meet the council.
But you needed to go.
We need to meet the council, so, yeah.
Which I love how the other, like, the capital city is called Providence. Very symbolic. I'm just saying. I mean, come on.
No, it makes sense. Pure city.
Pure
everything.
City. Yeah.
I wanted to know more about that city. I'm guessing we'll get it in part 2. Presumably, if it never comes back, I would find it hilarious. If that city just
never comes back.
Never comes back.
This is kind of going back to the relationship of 4 and Trish, but one of the things how Theo explains their chemistry is the fact that, like, if you do a romantic movie, whether a romantic comedy or just drama, you only kind of have one shot at it, right? You have to develop that chemistry within one movie. This, they've started together, and over the course of these 3 movies, they've been able to develop that and grow, and so there's that comfort level at this point in time that they have for each other.
And they're each other's consistent, like they've said. There's been different directors, there's different writers, but that team is what is constantly together. And when you're making a movie and dividing it between, like, who's having scenes with who, a lot of their scenes are together. So they're working together the most. Versus, like, to get
building the chemistry.
Yeah.
And
they have that time.
That's good.
But
speaking of David, how did you guys think about Jeff Daniels? Because I do want to talk about that. Number one, they kind of sought him out, which I thought was an interesting casting choice. Like, to me, I always think of Jeff Daniels as Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
And then, you know, for him, he says his biggest challenge was imagining the future. You know, like what that would actually be. I mean, you know,
I think
this
he
is
did a good
200.
job.
Yeah.
I think he did a great job.
I think he did a good job.
Yeah.
I think that my concern or my problems come more from like motivations surrounding that character, like his portrayal.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of the actors did the best with what they were given. I just felt that some of it, for instance, Naomi Watts is the easiest one for me to point out, is just that she had to focus so hard on like, I have to do this for my son, like, because those were her lines and she just had to keep going, but they never give her the opportunity to actually like listen to her son.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not written in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, you can't place that on the actor because it's the scenes they have. Maybe it was edited out, maybe it was written, maybe who knows what happened. But it's hard when I felt like a lot of the motivations were like kind of being pushed or yelled at the other person, like, oh, hello.
What happened there?
Shocked me a little bit.
But like, it's like she's like, I'm doing this for you, I'm doing this for you. Mm-hmm. But you never get to spend the time with them in this movie for them to talk or for her to listen to what he wants or really get to know. It's like, I'm shoving my motivation at you, but I'm not taking the time to actually justify why I want to do all these things.
So speaking of David, are we still categorizing him as a villain or an evil person? Because I still didn't get that from David. I just got that he was a character that was trying to do something better for the city, and he was not able to because of the council. So he had to come up with some, and maybe, yes, it had to be a lie or whatever the case may be. He had to do whatever he needed to do to get it. But I don't see him as a villain, and I don't see him as a.
I think the eventual thing will be that you can't treat humans as lab rats, no matter what. You know what I mean? Like, people can't be.
Even though he's trying to get for the good.
But he's not seeing them as people that are worth something. Okay. He's seeing them as experiments.
Yeah, the whole point is that that it is no different. That even though we've been through these now the third movie, like the fact that they have these tattoos, which again kind of goes back to Nazism. You're not that much different in the sense of factions versus pure and damage. Like all of it just needs to be ended.
Yeah,
is essentially the point.
And I think that what they try to do, I still am going to categorize them as. I'm going to categorize them as the villain. Mm-hmm. But what they have tried to do in this franchise, like with Kate Winslet's character, is not make them, I need power as much as like, we want to fix society. That's kind of constantly all of their highest people's goals. Like, all of them are like, we want to fix this society. We want to fix this society. Like, that is what they seem to all want.
Yeah. And, interestingly enough, speaking of Evelyn, it was actually in the book, it was Trish who figured out David's plan and tried to stop him. But obviously in the film, it's Evelyn who's told to release this serum.
Gas. Yeah. Serum, orange, madness.
Communication, man.
I mean, I get the orange just made it visually easier to see.
Yeah. That is why that color was chosen. That's funny.
There's a couple of other.
I mean, I have some information. I said before that my favorite part of this movie, I think, was the stunts and the action. I thought that the combat looked really, really good. There was a large variety. One of the things that they did together was the wall climb. That's been getting a lot of publicity. Was when they all rappelled up and down and were running. And Shailene's gotten a lot of praise because she's done a lot of her stunts since the beginning. And she does a lot of the jumps, the running, everything like that. It's all them. It was also one of the only scenes where you have kind of your ensemble cast all working together. It's hours and hours hanging on a rope, but I thought it was visually done really well, and that was at one point going to be like a big battle scene instead of like the blowing up and then running over the wall. But I thought that was one of my favorites. I'm trying to see if there's anything extra special about the interviews, but there's tons of information out there. It's one of their big press points. But did you guys have a favorite action scene or moment?
I thought that one was well done, and I'm glad they're highlighting it. But as a favorite, not necessarily. I'm trying to think of. There was a lot of smaller action sequences, but there was never like one big set piece.
Yeah, I agree.
Did you want like a war?
Yeah.
It's like,
I did. Even for when Evelyn and what was the other?
You're talking about the
Evelyn and the other.
He's talking about the leader of the amnesty.
Joanna.
Yes.
Evelyn and Joanna. I really wanted a little bit more of that before peace or before.
You just had really big wide shots.
I was just like, okay, and it was probably not even all those people. It was just a green shot, but I felt like I wanted a little bit more for them to break up.
Yeah, because tensions were high, but they never reached the boiling point.
Yeah. That scene you're talking about with the climbing, I enjoyed it until the shot, the way they had it lined up, where we knew she was about to get shot. Like I knew she was about to get shot. Like I was waiting, like, oh, she's about to die.
Like someone, I was like,
she's about to die.
It's just one of those things. I hate to say it, when when you're watching, you're like, just lesson learned. Like, don't look at the beauty. Just go. If people are firing at you, go.
Yeah, just go. Because in real life, I'm not standing to talk.
No, you don't stand.
That was a lie. No, let's go. We've been chased. Like, let's go, man.
Yeah.
Too much, man.
Absolutely. Any other story elements that you guys want to touch upon before we move into the technical aspects?
You know what else I thought was great? Just as a shot person in production, I love the fact on how when they got over the wall, and who was the guy that was chasing them?
Oh, he's talking about
the Mohawk guy
who gets his face burned off. When
he came over that rock and it froze, and they looked at him, and they all looked at each other like as he kept going over across them. That was cool. That was cool. I thought that was really cool because I was like, wait, so why is he standing there? Like, shoot him. Like, it's slow enough for you to just get you a quick aim in.
Slow mo
I know. I was like, oh man.
Like straight out of.
But I thought that was really cool. Yeah, I thought it was really cool because I was thinking to myself, now how did he get up the wall so easy?
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting trying to figure out how
with the
much.
Trump.
Yeah, but how much. Whoever was in charge of inside the walls knew about outside the walls.
That's what I got.
I was like, well, how did Evelyn find... She seemed to know about these people.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is the communication there? Mm-hmm. And how did that start between her? Because she hasn't been in power that long. But
maybe she's been trying to reach council.
A lot of those things just...
to help them know.
Didn't make complete sense.
Well, I mean, it's... in terms of Evelyn, it's just... what's the female character's name in Hunger Games?
Katniss?
No, not Katniss, but the one who's like the leader of Katniss.
You're talking about Julianne Moore?
Yes.
Her.
Well, whatever, right? It's to me it reminded me of that character where it's someone who says they're gonna help out the city, but ultimately they just gain power through it themselves.
Yeah.
And it's just a means to sort of an end in one way, shape, or form.
And how does why is Joanna a leader?
There used to be like a big leader or whatever council type thing, and then there was all these different factions, like groups, and each of those had their own leader as well. And Joanna had been part of the peaceful group or like the friendly group or something. And she had been there later. So this was like her shift. And she's not going to be peaceful, nice anymore. She's willing to go to war.
And what was her name? The other girl? The one that was there before?
Before
Evelyn? Janine.
Yeah.
Is dead.
Janine is dead. She is good and dead.
She was killed.
Although Shailene did want her back in the movie because Kate Winslet is an inspiration of hers.
I mean, wouldn't be. I'm trying to say, there was a lot of... Did you guys watch any interviews or anything from
I watched a few, but not... I mean, there's so many.
There's so many, and they've been doing these characters for years. I was just curious, because when I'm watching it, it seems like they're a little bit tired of being part of this franchise.
My first time watching it, I felt the same way. Like, I wasn't even thinking about past anything. I was just thinking that as a person going in, oh, let me just go watch this movie. And I'm watching it and I'm like, why do they feel like they're just like over it?
It seemed a little over it.
Think about like just from a schedule perspective, right? It just
It's
wears
draining.
you out.
And it's one of the reasons they've given for why the director changes is because they've been so worn out from doing these.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have to keep your actors.
And like think about it this way, like Shailene's like in between this time, Shailene did Fault in Our Stars, Spectacular Now. That was kind of a little bit before that. But I forget what Theo is up to. Miles Teller did Fantastic Four during all of this. So, like, they've got a lot going on.
Their careers have definitely been growing.
So, I mean, it is a huge...
It's exhausting.
And, like, Shailene's 24. You know, that's not necessarily normal, like, adulthood.
Yeah. But I think that it's reading a little bit in these ones. Not as much in their other projects.
Yeah.
But I thought it read a little bit in this one that they seem a little tired. Not in like in the action scenes and everything where the energy's up, it looks good. I just felt in some of the dialogue heavy scenes, I just didn't know if I fully felt like they believed it.
Well, I think,
Sometimes.
I mean, part of it is that a lot of people, fans and critics, like these dialogue scenes are just explanation, and there's no real kind of conflict with it. It's just, you're sitting there, I'm sitting here, and I'm explaining to you everything that you need to know. And so that just isn't as fun to play.
And they weren't in there, like the real scene. They were in green screens and a lot of you, like you said, like they weren't actually in that place. So.
They filmed in Atlanta. It just depends. But
Atlanta, Chicago.
You know,
Yeah, in
there's,
Chicago.
there's some, I don't know. But I'm very. This is the thing that I think I've been most fascinated about in this version of this movie is just the changes they've been doing to the characters, the storyline. There's one interviewer asked Shailene, you talked about how this process you've worked with so many different creative individuals, with so many different visions thrown into this storyline. How do you stay true to what your perception of Triss is and how to tell her story? And her answer was, it's hard. It's actually difficult because from day one, her perception of Triss has been the Triss that was written in the books. She says, I loved that Triss. When I signed on to these movies, we didn't have a script for Divergent. It was just the book as the source material. So it's difficult to retain the integrity of who Triss is in a world that doesn't cater to that. Then, at the same time, it's a good challenge. And we are very fortunate to have Theo, because he's fully on the same page with his character. We reflect back and forth on one another. So we're lucky, even if our very structures have shifted some things from the source material, they're also very open to collaboration. So this to me just sounds like they've made this pot where there was a character that she signed on to do, and it's just been changing, and she's adapting, and she's a talented actress, so she's figuring out her through lines. But it is a challenge when you have these different visions coming on board and your character is changing so much.
Yeah, I mean, the big question is who's ultimately driving it. I mean, the first movie, I forget the director's name, but at the very least, Insurgent and Allegiant were directed by Robert, the same director. Now, Ascendant, the fourth movie, is going to have a different director. So that'll be interesting. They haven't started filming that yet. So, we'll see what we get there.
I don't think I would see it. Even as a person that's following it, do you think you would see it?
I mean, I will, because I like to see a series through. And I think that since they do get to wrap up so much more, since it's going to be a part 2 and not a part 1, I'm hoping that their ideas, it's more about getting to that than I felt like some of maybe the plot devices and like breaking them apart might have been because they made it into 2 movies. And it was like, okay, well, we need to create your climax for this one, because you can't just have a movie build and get off. Like, you have to give it ups and downs. But I think in the second part, we'll have more of a clear trajectory where we need to go by the end of it.
Okay.
So I will watch it, and I just hope that they stay true to the characters that they've been creating.
Yeah, maybe we'll know more about the counselor, too.
Well, this this trend of 2 movies really started with Harry Potter, Warner Brothers, and now kind of Lionsgate's really adopted that through Twilight, Hunger Games, and now this. But for Harry Potter, it made sense. I mean, that was almost an 800-page book. You know, you split it 400 and 400. But in terms of this one, the co-chairman Robert Friedman wrote, Veronica Roth brings her captivating story to a masterful conclusion in Allegiant, a rich, action-packed book with material that is ideally suited to 2 strong and fulfilling movies. The storytelling arc and the world of the characters lend themselves perfectly to 2 movies, a storytelling strategy that has worked very well for us on Twilight. And so they were enthusiastic about doing this one. Again, but I think the problem is if you're not borrowing from the source material directly, then you can change it however you want.
I agree with that. I think it's a very good point. If you're already saying we're changing a lot from the book, and then you're putting on 2 movies, I think that you can do this type of genre in 1 movie. You don't have I don't think it's that difficult.
I think from a lot of the reviews that I've actually watched and panel discussions I've actually watched about this movie, they pretty much all said the same thing. They was like, we don't need, and this is like from probably some of the most known review people on YouTube. They were like, we don't need all these movies. Just give us one. Like put it all in one and just give us one.
It's a little late for that.
Yeah, kind of way late.
It is a little late for that.
But since budgets are being cut, things are being changed. Maybe in the future we will start seeing more
and better
condensed
movies
opportunities
with better stories.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's talk about the technicals, right? So, Robert, do you know how to pronounce his name, sir?
I was wondering too. Like, how do you pronounce it?
Schwenk.
I'm not gonna even try because I don't want to be
Sarah,
disrespectful.
Good luck, Schwentke.
There you go.
I don't know.
He did Time Travel's Wife,
wrong.
R.I.P.D., and of course Insurgent, and now this. He's a German director. I think in terms of direction, I didn't think there was anything wrong with it necessarily. It seemed consistent. What I did enjoy, it's like Insurgent had a different tone from Divergent, the first one, to me, and I could feel it. And because he directed Insurgent and now this, it felt a little bit similar.
My problem with this movie is that it made me want to rewatch the other movies, not because I enjoyed it so much, it made me like want to live in the world more, but because it made me feel like I was remembering things wrong.
Like which parts?
It made me feel like I was like, because in my head I was like, I think I've seen these relationship problems. I think some of this is going against dialogue that we've already heard. Like, it made me want to verify and be like, I think that I'm remembering things wrong.
I'm smiling now because I'm like, you're literally saying everything that these like true people who follow this were saying in their reviews, and I'm like, wow. Like, it's funny how people who are like really truly following this and saying the same thing.
I mean, that's just how I felt. And I probably will. And this has been, it's definitely not my favorite young adult franchise, but we've always talked about the amazing cast that they pull on board for every movie. Like, they don't have an actor who has a bad reputation. Every single actor they pull on is typically well liked, well known, going places,
and
like
good looking.
on an upward climb in their career. So it has so much potential, and I think that is also another reason I keep watching them. And they've taken this route of, we're going to make it really, they push for visuals more than anything. I think that's one of their primary targets, is like, what can we add that's visually dynamic to the movie we're creating, just with their design and whatnot. So I want to see these things come together, and it just unfortunately didn't completely align for me, most centrally because of character motivation and not learning from previous mistakes or what we've already seen.
I mean, I will say this movie was more enjoyable for me than the third Hunger Games movie.
Okay.
Because that was just, I don't know. Anyway, go listen to my thoughts on that anatomy.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe I'll go watch that one because I actually like that one better than this, but okay.
Is it because Jennifer Lawrence has a song in it?
Well, maybe.
We figured it out. Let's see. why don't we skip ahead to kind of the marketing and the reception of all of this? So interestingly enough, like the imagery we had behind us, it was originally going to be Allegiant Part 1 and Allegiant Part 2. Then they changed it to be the third one is obviously Allegiant. The fourth one's going to be Ascendant.
Something like that.
And this one's is Break the Boundaries of Your World, which I think fits nicely.
I think we're going to find out this whole universe is in like someone's head or something. Like we're just going to like, they're just going to be like, sorry, this
be
is
the worst
actually an
ending ever.
entire experiment.
I thought it was interesting that, because we'll talk about a lot of the budget cuts being made for the fourth one, but this one wasn't shot in 3D. So while it's not necessarily a budget cut, it is different from the others. And, it must be down to a money thing because it could have lent itself greatly to 3D.
Yeah, I think it could have definitely.
Which I thought was interesting.
This one.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah, it definitely could have had 3D. I think it's just because I'm sure that when they were crafting this movie, this hasn't had it's had the lowest release numbers wise, and you don't predict your numbers to drop that much. You predict them to stay steady or go up.
So as a box office breakdown expert who has a show on Popcorn Talk called Box Office Breakdown,
this is a disappointment. This is probably labeled as a flop.
Give us the numbers. Give us the numbers. I have them.
You have my notes. And I have no.
I have your notes.
You have the printed notes.
I didn't steal your notes. These are my.
We've been trying to get online
notes
for the last 3 minutes here.
All right, so it was projected to make around 28 to 30 million in its opening weekend from 3.7 or 3,700 theaters, and that would have still marked its lowest opening in the franchise. But
so they're predicting low. It was low. And
yes.
No good news here.
No, and so opening day it fell by 43.6% from what Insurgent made. In comparison to Hunger Games Part 1, the sequel only fell 21% to Catching Fire. Yeah. So
and it's got like about 11% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is very rotten.
Here's the thing. In general, like there's a lot of interesting articles. I don't want us necessarily getting too much into it because it's too insider. But there's a lot of articles being written about Lionsgate in particular, right? With the decline of Hunger Games, it ended on a down note. Gods of Egypt just came out. That was a bad one in terms of revenue. This is now the second miss in this calendar year. And stock is dropping, unfortunately, for Lionsgate. Now, again, the interesting part is, feel free to dive into it. They have a lot of TV stuff that they're doing, but people are citing that their core business is movies.
It's not even just aimed at Lionsgate. It's aimed at this genre in general.
But okay, so let's talk about that because you have how many superhero movies do you friggin' have?
Different genre.
But again, a genre nonetheless. And so how does that one keep surviving? Where it's like, oh, the young adult genre is dying. Like, come on, that's a cop out.
I think that I don't know if I can exactly pinpoint why it's dying. Yeah, I don't think anyone can, or else we'd be fixing it. It's just that these numbers aren't bringing in. You had like the fifth wave of Chloe Moretz, just no one saw. They're taking from books. TV's on the rise. You have streaming on the rise. You have all these different kind of players in the game that are bringing interest, whether it's Netflix or Amazon or people creating original content. Movies are also shifting from you've got super big budget to super low budget. The middle ground isn't typically doing as well, except for Deadpool, which only cost $60 and made
and
so
animation.
much.
Animation is not doing as well either.
The tentpole ones, Zootopia.
Some of them, Zootopia
Inside Out.
Yeah.
So, what is the difference? I don't know. We're also having a ton of debate about diversity and women leads, and one of the greatest appeals supposedly for the young adults movies was at first kind of pushing more female leads. That's what you had from like Twilight, and when they were doing like magical creatures and all these, like a lot of
Magical creatures. I did not see that one.
There's all these ones. There's like there's just so many, and it's bringing up like new talent. But I don't know how you save it. I don't know if you bring in what like.
I think you can make a good movie for the people. Here's the thing: I enjoyed it, but at the same time, the fact that we're talking about that is so vastly different from the source material. Stick to what people like. That's what those people fell in love with.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what, like, if you compare Marvel, they stick to their core audience. They make a good movie for their audience, and then let it expand from there.
Yeah, because I would say if I was watching this and I was listening to what you were saying, what you guys were saying, and the knowledge from you all, it will probably make me want to go and like, oh, I want to watch this whole entire thing. But just going myself and just going to go see the movie myself, and then now sitting here, I'm like, I wish I would have saved my money.
I mean, I think that I was trying to think of how they could have fixed this, like how they, because a lot of what I've said about this movie has been negative, and I was like, well, what could they have done to fix it? And I actually don't think it would have been that difficult. I think more guidelines just needed to be in place. I guess that's more exposition, you know, just showing what these societies could do. I think you needed more disguising of motivations. I think that the characters needed to play towards, for instance, David's character. If his goal is to get Triss on his side, the best way to get someone on your side is to not only befriend them, but befriend the people around them. Like, that's common sense. If you want to be friend, like, don't isolate them off and be like, you're my only friend. Like, you try and enter their worlds. Like, I think there could have been more there. It didn't need to be like completely reworked from the ground up for me. There just needed to be some shifts.
Yeah, I do agree. I think it is a trope that happens too oftentimes that, you know, if I was trying to get Cortez on my side and let's say you guys were friends, but I treated Sarah like shit. Like, it's just like, why? That doesn't make sense. Treat both people like equally.
Yeah, and like that's more interesting for a movie. Like, that's more disguising of like, well, is he a bad guy? Is he a good guy? It's the same for Evelyn's character. If you're going to tell her that she wants to be the best mom, then have it put forth in some type of danger or some type of where he might need her to use the memory gas on people.
I kept pondering that. I was just like, he doesn't like her, it seems like.
Yeah, he doesn't like her, and he's doing fine. Like, what the world are you saving him from? Like, he wants out. Like, there just wasn't enough connect. Like, so what's your character? What do they want? And how do normal people get those things?
And then
do you think there's too many characters? Because they've been cut down a bit.
Unnecessary, still unnecessary characters. Like, I still don't know what the character of Christina is. It Christina?
Yeah, I believe so.
Played by Kravitz.
Yeah.
Her. I didn't understand why she was still steady there and saying little small lines like, "You should be." When he was like, "I'm scared," she was like, "I should be. You should be."
They've needed to take some cues from like Game of Thrones and like kill off some people.
Yeah.
And they just don't.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, Rotten Tomatoes, the consensus reads, Allegiant improves on previous entries of the Divergent series on a few superficial levels, but they aren't good enough to counteract a sense of growing boredom with a franchise that's gone on too long. But interestingly enough, Cinema Score gives it a B, which isn't that terrible.
Yeah, that's much better than I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, what do you think I was going to say?
C+.
But C.
C+. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say C.
But, you know, I mean, it's the same score that Batman v Superman has, and yet Batman v Superman is going through the roof. Interestingly enough, they have a similar...
There are certain movies that are critic-proof. It's a known fact.
Well, Cinema Score is an audience.
For opening weekend?
You have to give it at least 5 days, though,
on my
right?
side, I'm thinking Rotten Tomatoes, and it doesn't matter what you...
Rotten Tomatoes, interestingly enough, Batman v Superman share similar Rotten Tomatoes
score. It's 29%. That's what I'm looking at right now.
Ah, well, that is a little bit better. All right, so let's talk about the sequel, right? Sarah, do you want to talk about how the budget got slashed for the fourth one due to this? The budget for this one was $110 million.
And with what it's bringing in, they ain't getting that money anymore.
They won't be getting that budget this time.
You have all the numbers.
I don't actually. I don't. Here's the thing. There's been a lot of talk about that they're cutting the budget. I don't know what they're cutting it to. And in some way, it's going to force them to be creative. But in other ways, this is supposed to be the grand. This is it.
Yeah.
So how are you going to bring it all?
You need a budget. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It's also hard because they have created. They're so reliant on the visuals in this and the special effects and your stunt work. All that's very expensive. And if they're going to be making, is it a final battle? Is it the next city? All of that is huge things, but they are going to have to get more creative. And it doesn't fit where
you can go the South Park route where you have someone overlooking, let's say, on the wall and facing whatever side they want, and be like, wow. That's a big battle. And that's
like
it.
A narrator just, oh, wow. That could
we'll
work.
see.
Hey.
But yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to know what the budget actually is. Like, if it goes from 110 to 100 million, then, okay, not so bad. If it goes from 110 to
75.
60...
I think it's going to go to like 75.
Yeah.
They're going to be like Deadpool did it for 60. Like... Make a movie.
Yeah,
What
but
do you
Deadpool also commented.
What do you think they should put the money into? Stunts, graphics.
I think they need one huge set piece at the end.
Yeah, I think you cut traveling between all these areas.
Okay.
You pick one that you're really centrally at. Maybe, and you.
That means no Providence. That's what's getting cut. I'm telling you, like, it could be.
I think you have to pick one place kind of to be. It's going to be the
whole-
most help. Yeah.
Okay.
And then
But interesting. I mean, part
trap
of
a lot of people and like do the whole champion route. You like one person from each side to determine the outcome.
it, one-on-one fight.
I know, right?
Everyone picks a representative.
Exactly.
I mean, so now historically, these movies have always been kind of in the springtime area. They're moving this one back to June 9th, 2017, despite Paramount World War Z 2 coming out the same, and Universal with a reboot of The Mummy. So that in general, I feel like, I mean, it doesn't set them up for the best weekend.
It's not the best, but it's counter programming, and it's better.
Really? The Mummy and World War Z 2.
World War Z 2. I think this is much more female oriented.
yeah.
All right.
In my opinion.
If you say so.
I mean, it's the other movie. You have so
It's not
many
Batman v Superman versus My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2. Like, that's counter programming.
True.
And then I feel like Lionsgate now, I don't know, they might be putting their efforts into Power Rangers, which is taking that, sort of slot.
I was trying to find that. It's funny you mentioned that.
The Power Rangers?
Power Rangers.
So
I don't have internet, so I can't tell you.
and then Lee Todlin.
Are you excited
Krieger.
for Power Rangers?
I've never been a Power Rangers guy.
Not even when I was a kid.
Okay.
I know the song because it was like, I mean, they made it
Power
everywhere.
Rangers.
They really had a good franchise on that, but
So in all
We'll see.
You'll see Sarah and Cortez
I'm-
back for Power Rangers.
I was just
I'm
checking. I
getting
was
that.
like, so you guys are jumping off the Lionsgate wagon.
No, I'm not. Well, so I think it'll come down to this, and I never really like to kind of read the news until after I see the movie. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot. So right now I'm going to get into spoiler talk.
Spoilers.
If you've read the book,
Spoilers.
feel free to partake.
Spoilers.
But again, if you don't want to know anything whatsoever about the fourth movie,
sign off.
Sign off now.
Bye, thank you.
Follow Sarah at
Sarah_Stratton.
Cortez.
All social media handles at Cortez G West.
That's right, and follow Movie Anatomy and then The Popcorn Talk. So, but again, if you want spoilers, stick around for the next couple of minutes.
Thanks for
Spoil
chitting with
away.
us.
So the tagline for the fourth one is "The end is never what you expected." Now,
See, I told you they're just gonna be like mind blown. This is a lie.
well, in the books, Trish dies, and Veronica Roth has always stuck to her notion that needed to happen, that it was justified. But fans are literally having change.org petition to change the ending for the movie.
They're not killing her in the movie.
They're not.
I don't think so. I was like,
Trish.
Yeah, is that confirmed that they're not?
Well, it's very cryptic, but here's what Veronica writes. well, what does that mean? Well, basically, it means there are going to be some changes. But it's really too early to know exactly what those changes will be or to the extent of them. I know changes always make fans of the books nervous, but hopefully the characters we know and love, or sometimes love to hate, will still be intact, which is really the important thing. I am eager to see how these movies turn out along with you guys.
Based on only the first book I read, I completely understand why Trish could have ended up dying. Because it was so like it was dark, and there was people died in that book, and you had people like being beat up. With the movies where it's been so bright and shiny, I don't see how they can kill Trish.
I mean, I don't see how they can kill Trish either, because to me in my head she's the only one that's pure, for one. So if anyone had to die, it would be 4.
Well, that's why she's pure. She's like the Jesus type.
But it could be like that's not something to aim for. Everyone, like, damage is not in a category. I'm not the pinnacle. Like, everyone is equal.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, and again, this is why I asked you specifically about Caleb and how you guys felt, because Caleb initially sacrifices himself to go off and do this and whatever, save the world type of thing. But Trish, in a moment of whatever, realizes that he's only doing it because he's not doing it out of pure love. He's only doing it to, atone for everything. And so she's the one that ends up, saving the world.
I mean, as I said, though, with the books, would not be, can definitely see how you could end up with your lead character dying. With these movies and how pretty they are and how kind of not gory, I just don't see them killing her.
I do hate when movies, because there are a lot of movies and books, kill off their main character, because I think just the ball went out of bounds. And it's just okay. It's a Jesus type metaphor. Like, let's pump the brakes and let's get a little creative.
Doesn't bother me. Game of Thrones, favorite show.
All right. Well, we'll sacrifice you, Sarah.
Okay.
All right. Final thoughts as we wrap this Allegiant up.
Like I said, you guys, I know you guys are going to come in like, why is he there? Like, for me, I'm here for the goals. I know I'm not the only one that has not watched the whole series, but I hope I asked some questions that maybe you all were thinking that I was thinking as well. If I had to say, if you haven't watched it and you don't follow the series, you asked me if I should go see it, I would say no.
Yeah, I would say, if you want to stick with this series and see it through the end, this isn't
Definitely
probably
watch it,
going to
yeah.
be your favorite. Of your 4, of the 4 that end up coming out, I could see it being in your bottom 2. Maybe your bottom 1, but it doesn't destroy the groundwork they've done. It just suffers a little bit from what I've decided to call Tomorrowland syndrome. If you saw that movie, you probably know what I mean. Where there's talent behind it, there's effort, it's just the pieces didn't come together.
No. I mean, it's, again, I think it's just, it's interesting to me. It's always been, I just, for whatever reason, Hunger Games I found very boring. This, at least, is different, and so I'm giving it a higher grade than perhaps I should be, but nonetheless, there you have it. I think at the very least, when it comes out all on Blu-ray, sit down and watch it with a friend or something. It might be worth it. If nothing else, I really, I think Shailene Woodley is fantastic. I think Theo James, Miles Teller has been a favorite of mine since Project X, and then 21 and Over, so on and so forth. So I really like him. And yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us on another Anatomy of a Movie here on Popcorn Talk. You can check out all of our past shows. There's over 250 of them at this point, so definitely worth going in. A couple of them Cortez has guested on, so check those out. What was the Agent one we did? Agent 47.
Agent 48?
Agent something.
49.
Agent something.
Agent 52.
You can see how memorable that movie must have been.
See?
And of course, follow Sarah. She does box office breakdown here on Popcorn Talk, so definitely worth checking that out as well.
Thank you.
And we'll be doing Batman v Superman this coming Friday, along with My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2. And we've got so many movies coming down the pipeline. You've got Captain America, Civil War. You've got the X-Men. You've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What else is big in the summer? Guardians of the Galaxy. The second one is coming out. So much. So check it out. Sarah, once again, where can the people follow you?
At Sarah_Stratton.
And Cortez.
At Cortez G West.
And thank you guys for joining us. Check out all the other good stuff. And if you've seen Batman v Superman, feel free to check out DC Movie News with Sarah's best friend, Roxy Stryer. They kind of break it down. Our dissection on Friday, I'm sure, will be vastly different, but nonetheless, if you like Nietzsche, we'll talk Nietzsche if you want.
There you go.
That's enticing. See you guys next time.
Try to see clearly. Now let the healing start. The fire's out.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.